Greetings, Rebel fans. My name is Jason Kelly. This is the Let's Run podcast. I want to welcome you all to the show today. Lots going on in the world of UNLV sports. Lots of lots of smoke and noise surrounding the basketball program. You have national reporters talking about UNLV and the Pac-12. You have Dan Mullen losing a couple of really important players that I envisioned being returning starters for the UNLV football team. And times are crazy right now. So let's jump into it. Let's start with UNLV versus Utah State. So I'm going to present the screen here. I'm going to try and keep tonight as brief as I can. This will be the pregame show, the pregame podcast for the matchup versus the Utah State Aggies. UNLV tomorrow night travels up to the mighty Spectrum Arena to take on the Utah State Aggies. It is a game right now that Ken Pom has UNLV at about a 15% chance of winning. Ken Pom projects a final score of 79-68. Let's jump into the matchup. Obviously, UNLV a couple of weeks ago, almost exactly 2 weeks ago to the day, defeated the Utah State Aggies at home at the Thomas and Mack Center. It's been a couple of weeks since then. That was the start of a really fun 7 days for Rebel fans, followed up by a very disappointing next 7 days for Rebel fans as UNLV fell to both New Mexico and the University of Wyoming at home in a really disappointing week. So what do we know about this Utah State team? Well, first of all, Utah State is a very good offense. They rank top 25 in adjusted efficiency. Their effective field goal percentage, they're not an incredible I should say, there's nothing that Utah State doesn't do well. Utah State scores well. They shoot well. They play at a decently fast pace. They play pretty quickly. 16.2 seconds is their average possession length. They don't turn the ball over a ton. They are a little vulnerable on that end, but they don't turn the ball over a ton. Their offensive rebounding percentage is very good. Their free throw percentage is probably one of their worst attributes. But there's a lot of vulnerability there. There's not a lot of vulnerabilities there. And at home, they have been nigh unbeatable this year. Their only loss at home, I believe, came to UC San Diego, which was, looking at that. That was December 17th. They lost a really close game to UC San Diego at home. In that game, it was a game that Utah State was very heavily favored to win, but UC San Diego is a very good team and a team that went into the Spectrum Arena with head coach Eric Olin, a guy that I would honestly love to see be the next head coach at UNLV. And they were able to beat San Diego State. But besides that game, that's San Diego State's only other loss this year is at UNLV. It was easily the best performance. I think besides the San Diego State, obviously, the San Diego State game, which was the Rebels' best performance of the year, that Utah State game was a really good and concerted Rebel win. Where the Rebels didn't actually offensively play that well. If you dig into this game that UNLV had against Utah State, they were down 7 with 5 minutes to go. At 5:10 to go in the second half, we trailed Utah State 60-53. Jalen Hill had his best game as a running Rebel. DJ Thomas hit that incredibly clutch fall away jumper to end the game that really kind of sealed it for the Rebels. And the Rebels squeaked one out against Utah State in a game that wasn't even really their best performance. Frankly, that was my favorite win in a long time. It felt really good to get back in Utah State, but they're going to have revenge on their minds. Utah State is led by, let's jump into the matchup. Utah State's best player is probably Ian Martinez right now. Earlier in the season, I would have said Mason Falslev, a couple of 6'3" guards that are both really disciplined, that play really controlled, and they know exactly what they are as players, Ian Martinez and Mason Falslev. It leads to a really good, a really formidable backcourt. for the Utah State Aggies. Incredible team, incredible backcourt, really tough to stop, versatile. Ian Martinez is a freak athlete. He can get downhill. He will dunk on everybody. Banana Man, one of our favorite burners, says, "Hopefully we show up big on a stage in front of the herd." Yeah, I mean Utah State's home environment is incredible. I have been there before. I've been to a game, UNLV versus Utah State. Really fun place to watch a game. Really fun fan base to interact with. Obviously, I love Utah State as a fan base. So Hicks can shut down false love. I hope that this is a game where Brooklyn Hicks gets more opportunity, that he gets more opportunity to play. He's only been averaging, between 20 and 22 minutes a game over the last few. And I think Brooklyn Hicks is a guy that can really add a lot to this team, and deserves more playing time than he's currently getting. He's too good to only be getting, does it say how many minutes he plays per game? It does not. But I think he's too good to only be, considered a role player. I think he has to be a significant contributor. I really want to see Brooklyn Hicks, get some significant time in this one. The big thing for me that I'm going to be looking out for is Jalen Bedford. Jalen Bedford, on the year, it surprised me to see that he's shooting 38% from three. I would not have thought it would have been that high. But the real warning sign for Jalen Bedford has been his 2-point percentage, only shooting 41% from the field. He's only a 97.5 offensive rating. Julian Rishwain is the highest besides Pop. In terms of the person who starts, who gets a lot of minutes, Julian Rishwain is technically the Rebels' most efficient offensive player. But Jalen Bedford, are we going to see that game where Jalen Bedford really takes over and provides an incredible scoring touch? I think this game, and I think the Rebels' ability to squeak out more games is going to come down to Jalen Bedford. That's my opinion about it. I apologize if the mics are. I think my sound might be going in and out. I'm going to switch out of my AirPods. Let them charge. Thank you, Pack Killer. Can I be heard now? I think I can be heard now. All right. I'm going to assume that everybody can hear me now because I think it muted me accidentally. So thank you for calling that out. So I want to see a good Jalen Bedford game. I want to see Jalen Hill. I don't think we're going to get as good of a game for Jalen Hill as we did in the previous one, but I want to see him assert himself, especially down low, getting downhill towards the basket. What do I think about this one? I'm going to be interested to see if the game is close. There's been a lot of talk about we have Sergeant Morhew. Greetings. Hello, Mr. Morhew. Appreciate you checking out the show. He's coming in from YouTube, which is pretty uncommon that we get commenters from YouTube. So thanks for I do post all of these on YouTube. So thanks for the shout out. Are we going to see a close game at the end? That's my biggest thing. Are we going to have more we will have more opportunities for DJ Thomas, to be in clutch situations throughout the year. Overall, DJ has been a very good clutch player, but he's missed some free throws at the ends of games. He's missed front ends of 1-on-1s. He's missed obviously several 4 or 5 pretty open, good looks that were game-winning possibilities, game-winning shots. He's missed those. So I'm going to be interested to see how DJ does kind of in clutch situations. We have a comment from SM who asks, why can't Kruger recruit to Vegas like Lloyd Christmas did back in the 2010s? I don't know that UNLV as a brand has really struggled as a basketball brand over the last 4 or 5 years. I think that the TJ Otzelberger, Marvin Menzies years really dinged UNLV's reputation. And, you know, TJ Otzelberger leaving UNLV with a losing record. And then, you know, Marvin Menzies was kind of a joke of a head coach. I got to be honest with you. I think Marvin Menzies was a complete joke. And so I don't know exactly what's going on. I also think, you know, with NIL, UNLV has actually kind of lost a little bit of its advantages as a basketball program. Because in the past, you know, UNLV could pay players a little bit. Yeah. And they had Vegas as a pull. But with no community support for the team right now, their NIL budget is not as high as it should be, really. And so the program's just not in a great spot. If you want to know why Kruger can't recruit as well as other people that have coached at UNLV, it's because he's not as good of a coach. He did have some turnover on his staff. I know after his first season, he basically lost his entire staff. Carlin Hartman was a big player for Kevin Kruger. But, you know, Kevin Kruger struggles because he's not great. He's not a great head coach. And so he obviously wouldn't be a great recruiter either. Dave Rice did. Yeah, Blurt Reynolds says Dave Rice recruited well. Yes, he did. Dave Rice was very good at selling Vegas and bringing in 5-star type talent. Lon Kruger had Bryce Dijon Jones in the NBA. Well, Dijon played for Dave Rice. You know, he was in Dave Rice's third year. So I don't know if Lon Kruger recruited Dijon Jones, but anyhow, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I think that this team plays better against good teams in good environments. I don't think that Spectrum Arena, you know, where Utah State plays, is going to act as a massive turnoff for the team. I think that the Rebels are going to probably play pretty well. I don't think they're going to win the game, but this team does play better when they play around a crowd. And so I do expect the game to be kind of close, at least until, you know, about 4 or 5 minutes to go. Ken Palm's projection of a 78-69 victory, I think, is probably about spot on. I think an 80-70 or 80-69 victory. I think Utah State hits 80 points. I think UNLV loses by about 10. And that's kind of how I see it right now. Utah State's incredibly good. They're the best team in the conference right now, alongside New Mexico. I think that New Mexico probably has better players than Utah State, but Utah State is probably the best team, the best run team, the best coach team. And it's going to come down to those two teams. And then, you know, San Diego State, Colorado State, Boise State are in a tier below them. And then UNLV is probably in a tier by themselves. So, yeah, that's kind of how I see it. I see about a 10-point Utah State win. I think it'll be a good game. I think there's going to be some fun moments. I do not expect, you know, I said that I wanted Jalen Bedford to go for 25 and win the game. But, you know, to be honest with you, I don't really expect much from Jalen Bedford. I don't think he's been very good this year. I don't think he's very good. I don't expect much from Bear Cherry. I don't think Bear Cherry's been good or is working for this team right now. And I would love for them to prove me wrong. I would love for DJ to look like a top 5 player in the Mountain West and go out there and get another shocking win. They're asking about Bishop Gorman. So Bishop Gorman, you know, the Rebels have gotten players from Bishop Gorman before. I believe Isaiah Cottrell was a Bishop Gorman player. We obviously got Steven Zimmerman when he came out of high school. The Rebels have gotten Gorman players before, but Gorman actually, I don't think they're quite as good as they were 7 or 8 years ago, in my humble opinion, in basketball. The Finley Prep thing has kind of died down a lot. You know, Finley Prep shutting down really, I think, hurt UNLV recruiting a lot. I missed that as a pipeline to the Rebels. And obviously, you know, the Rebels didn't get all the Finley Prep players, but they did get some. I believe Anthony Bennett was a Finley Prep player. Nigel Goss Williams was supposed to be a Rebel. He was a Finley Prep player. The Rebels got several. Carlos Lopez Sosa was a Finley Prep player. And so losing that as a pipeline has hurt the Rebels. So I guess we're going to see Rashad Vaughn. There's another one, was a Finley Prep player. Again, you know, I have some theories about UNLV basketball that I guess I could get into right now. Sergeant Morhew asks, will UNLV make the NIT this year? Absolutely not. UNLV is not an NIT team. They're not an NIT bubble team.
unless they win out or lose. I mean, UNLV can afford to lose 2 more games in conference play if they want to be an NIT contender. I don't think that's going to happen. I think UNLV is going to get around 8 or 9 losses in conference play. 11-9 is probably where I see this team. 12-8 would be an achievement. No, absolutely not. I do not think UNLV has any shot at the NIT. And they certainly do not have any shot at the NCAA tournament, whether that be for they're not going to win the Mountain West Conference tournament, and they're not going to, they're not going to compete for a Mountain West Conference regular season title either. So probably not going to happen. I don't think UNLV is going to go to any postseason this year, and I think that the program is going to be at a crossroads at the end of the year. Reno Hater says, just beat Reno twice. I don't care about the rest of the games. It's a dead season anyway. Yeah, beat Reno. I mean, if you sweep Reno, then at least Kevin Kruger can go out as the UNLV head coach with his head held high. So I'm probably going to write this out. I didn't plan on getting into this right now, but I think that, UNLV basketball has 2 options at the current point in time. One option is to do the UNLV football route. We had Marcus Arroyo as our head coach. By all accounts, he was an incredibly mediocre / bad head coach who had shown improvement during his time as the head coach of the UNLV football team. But UNLV decided mediocrity is not going to be good enough for UNLV football, and they decided to invest serious money into the UNLV football program and hired Barry Odom, and the rest is history up until the present right now. UNLV football made the right choice. Investing in football is pivotal in the current college sports landscape. Now, what is the path for UNLV basketball? I'm going to put this out in a tweet because I want it kind of put in words. But my theory of the case for UNLV basketball is that they have 2 options. Option number 1, follow the UNLV football route, hire a big name or a guy with a lot of experience, somebody that you will come into Vegas and produce a winner quickly. Those 2 types of names do exist. Now, they might not stay at UNLV long if they do achieve that, but kind of try and replicate what you did with Barry Odom. That's path number 1. Treat UNLV basketball with the respect that it deserves, with its history, and try and create a good program that you invest a ton of money into. That's path 1. Path 2 is it's pretty sad, but it's cut your losses. Keep Kevin Kruger around because he's cheap. Kevin Kruger's costing us about $700,000, $800,000 a year. In terms of Mountain West coaches, he's not one of the higher paid Mountain West coaches. I think there's 4 or 5 that make more money than him. Kevin Kruger's a budget head coach. We're getting budget results from his budget head coaching. And basically admit that we're a football school. Now, I don't want the school to take this route. I'm just telling you that it is a route. In order to do this, you'd have to do a few things. You'd have to curtain off the top of the Thomas and Mack. There's no reason to have people sitting up there when the lower bowl is only, 20% full. There's no reason to have people, there's no reason to be selling tickets to people in the top. Curtain off the top. You're going to have to lower season ticket prices. Part of the reason why UNLV's ticket prices are as expensive as they are, $25 a ticket to see a mediocre college basketball team, is because UNLV has long-standing season ticket holders that they charge a specific amount, and they do not want to devalue their tickets by lowering ticket prices for everybody. So they'd have to lower season ticket prices. They'd have to lower single game prices. And they'd have to try and fill the lower bowl as much as they can. They get rid of the DJ, and move the band next to the student section, and basically say, all right, we're going to do the best we can with UNLV basketball. We're going to keep Kevin Kruger around. He's cheap. We're going to try and do more with less. And we're going to try and kind of reframe what we expect from UNLV basketball. We're a football school now. We still love basketball. We still are going to invest into basketball, but The majority of our focus is going to be on football. Kevin Kruger, say what you want about him. He's not I think he's at least as good of a coach as Marvin Menzies. He's probably about the same. I think he can win some games. But that's a route. And if UNLV came out and said, we're not a basketball school anymore, I would disagree with that. If the athletic director came out and said, we're going to keep Kevin around, we know it's not what people want, but we think it's better just to invest our resources into other things and give Kevin another couple of years, I would disagree with that decision. I would think it's almost giving up on basketball, but at least I would respect that they have a vision. And I understand that UNLV basketball, objective one, stop fans from raising their hands during free throws. Okay. Not going to bring that up here. I'm not sure that Kruger is that much better than Menzies. I got to be honest with you. I mean, I thought Menzies was a terrible coach, but they're about the same to me. I mean, if you look at Menzies' last 2 years, his second and third year, pretty similar results to what we've had from Kevin Kruger. Yeah, I would love to see a Eric Musselman UNR type. Eric Musselman had NBA experience when Reno hired him. It's not like they were hiring some complete unknown commodity. So UNLV can either go all in with basketball or say we're going to keep Kevin around and go budget. Reno Hater wants Ravi to unblock him. So I guess I'll put that up just so Ravi can see that, because I'm pretty sure Ravi watches this. Will Wade is the equivalent of the football route. I love Will Wade. I think that that's a great name. I hope that UNLV pursues him. But I do think that Will Wade could be a Power 4 coach next year, not a UNLV level coach next year. Hire a guy who hire the guy who finds Utah State's basketball coaches. Yep, Utah State is absolutely the formula that you want to follow. Even if coaches leave you, you want year after year success. I want to make sure that I'm getting. Yeah, I mean, it would be good to see things like Pop Kong. Bring back Chem Kong. We need to fill the lower bowl. When I watch UNLV play in the Thomas and Mack, it is sad. And I think that the players take note of all the empty seats. And I think that they need to change something about the way they go about it. It's either hiring a guy like Will Wade and spending a ton of money, or it's curtaining off the top and lowering prices for everybody and trying to lure back in people that way and keeping Kevin Kruger around. Not only Kruger is a mediocre coach, but he's also a zero in the personality department. You need a coach who can bring some environment to the program in the city. Yeah, there's something to be said about that. I mean, Kevin Kruger does not have a ton of charisma. I think he's a generally pretty boring guy to talk to and to listen to speak. I think he's a nice guy, but yeah, I mean, I would love to see Kevin Kruger ride a bull. Maybe that would help him. I mean, the thing is, Barry Odom didn't have a ton of charisma either. I thought he was kind of boring, but there was a stoicism and like a respectful feeling that I got when I would listen to Barry Odom talk that I don't get from Kevin Kruger. So UNLV basketball is at a crossroad. It's going to be up to the boosters. It's going to be up to the athletic department to decide kind of what we want to do. This game against Utah State tomorrow should be a blast. I do want to briefly go into the Pac-12 smoke. So in case you are unaware, yeah, I mean, like, I miss Chet Buchanan at the Thomas and Mack. When I was growing up, Chet Buchanan did such a good job. But okay, I want to go on to the PAC stuff. I want to talk about the PAC stuff briefly, because I feel like I have said plenty about it. I talk about it all the time. It's kind of one of my things. It's the hill that I want to die on. But in case you haven't seen it, John Canzano, he is a guy with a lot of connections to the current Pac-12. In fact, he gets the majority of his sourcing directly from people like Teresa Gould, who is the current Pac-12 commissioner. Bring back lights, please. Yes, that would help. I absolutely think that UNLV needs to ditch the Mountain West as quickly as possible, but they need to do it in a way that gets them the best deal possible. So John Canzano, the kind of lead reporter for Pac-12 stuff, continually brings up UNLV as an option for the Pac-12. UNLV turned down the Pac-12 in October, signed a motion of understanding with the Mountain West, and was promised like somewhere between $20 and $25 million to stay in the Mountain West Conference. The Mountain West basically backed up the Brinks trucks and did everything they could to keep UNLV in the Mountain West. What you have to understand is the Mountain West, as it currently stands right now, UNLV finished 34th in the S&P Plus rankings, which is kind of seen as the gold standard of college football rankings. The second highest team in the new Mountain West was Northern Illinois, which finished 92nd or 82nd, I believe. And then the rest of the new Mountain West was in the hundreds. There's only 130 college football teams. The new Mountain West is a disaster of a football conference. UTEP has been a disaster in football forever. New Mexico and Reno do not invest the requisite amount to build competent football programs. Hawaii, there are too many logistical issues for them to build football programs. And they'll let them leave if, UNLV, like the thing about motions of understanding are they're binding once consideration has been given between the two parties. The minute UNLV either signs away a grant of media rights to the Mountain West, which has not happened yet because the Mountain West has not secured their media deal. The minute the UNLV signs a grant of rights to the Mountain West, which the motion of understanding did mention a grant of rights, but it was not an actual grant of rights. I feel like that needs to be said. The minute that UNLV takes money from the Mountain West, they're locked into the Mountain West, once, at least in terms of going to the Pac-12. But until then, until there's been consideration between the two sides, UNLV is not really locked in. They would obviously still be subject to, whatever poaching and penalty fees survive this court case that's going on between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. But UNLV is currently, setting themselves up to be in the worst or the second worst college football conference in America. Conference USA is really the only, even the Sun Belt, AAC, the new Pac-12, and then obviously all of the power conferences. The only conference that UNLV and the new Mountain West could even compete with is Conference USA. They're setting themselves up to be in an awful conference. Now, you can win in bad conferences, but eventually it's going to come back to bite you because you're not getting as much money in a media deal. You're not playing consistent competition. And it ends up biting you in the butt after a period of time. And also, you're not playing teams that are any good, and it's a lot easier to sell home games and tickets to games of Boise State versus UNLV versus UTEP versus UNLV. And so UNLV staying in the Mountain West is an abject disaster. Now, that money is great, but what you have to understand is these are state, public universities, they can erase debt, they can do things money-wise that other private institutions can't do. If UNLV does have the goal of going, because Banana Man's asking about the Big 12, if UNLV does have the goal of going to the Big 12, then, their money distribution, they get 3.5 right now from the Mountain West. The Big 12 schools are getting $32 million a year per school. This is all peanuts compared to, the upper levels of college football spending. Can I see UNLV to the Big 12 at all? I don't want to say it's impossible, but absolutely not. The issue with going to a Power 5 conference is, and always has been, if you look at the Big 12 this year, they added group of 5 schools. They added Cincinnati. They added UCF. They added, and Sergeant Moorhugh's asking about this as well. What if they stay in the Mountain West, take $35 million and dominate the next 4 to 5 years and hope for a Big 12 invite? The thing is, the Big 12 has added G5 level schools. The Big 12 only got 1 school into the college football playoff, despite having a pretty good resume. I think BYU had a better resume than SMU, for example. But the Big 12 is looked down upon by the other Power 5 conferences, even by the ACC. And why is that? Because the Big 12 added G5 schools. The Big 12 is already at 16 members. How bad is the Big 10 really? I don't know. But the Big 12 is already at 16 members. So UNLV would have to bet on, in order for a Big 12 invite, UNLV would have to bet, one, that the Big 12 would be okay with diluting their brand even more by adding more Group of 5 schools. The Big 12 can use Las Vegas without UNLV. They can, that's a big enough conference with enough money behind it that they can use Allegiant Stadium for a conference championship game if they wanted to. They already do their media days in Vegas. The Big 12 does not need UNLV to use the city of Las Vegas. And they're already using the city of Las Vegas. So UNLV, in order to get into the Big 12, would have to bet that of the 16 schools that are in the Big 12 currently, that they would want to add, like something like 4 more schools. UNLV would have to bet that they would be one of those 4 schools or 2 schools that would be added to the Big 12. They would be leaping from one of the bottom 2 conferences in the country, between Conference USA and the New Mountain West, to one of the top 4 conferences in the country. They'd be leaping the Pac-12, which will be a better conference than the New Mountain West, altogether. They would have to bet that the Big 12 schools would be okay sharing revenue with them. When you join a new conference, they share revenue. They would have to bet that that all of the Big 12 schools, all of them, they all have to vote on this unanimously, would unanimously choose to share revenue with UNLV. And they'd have to choose that they'd have to basically bet on them being selected over San Diego State, who invests a lot more into athletics than UNLV does, over Oregon State, who invests a lot more into athletics than UNLV does and has a Power 5 pedigree, over Washington State, who invests more than UNLV does and has a Power 5 pedigree, over Boise State, who makes it to college football playoffs, who has 3 Fiesta Bowl wins in the last 15 years. It's an insane bet. And I think it's a bet that is not worth taking. Go to the better conference right now. Use your position, use your leverage right now to put yourself into a better conference. If the Big 12 is going to come, I think you have a better chance of jumping from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. Now, would that be expensive? Yes, but you'd also be making so much more money in the Big 12 that the expense would be peanuts. Use your leverage to negotiate down those exit fees from the new Pac-12 into the Big 12. Don't be in a crappy conference. To be freely open to moving yourself into a better competitive situation and choosing not to is insanity. It's not smart. You're not outsmarting anybody. You are insane. That doesn't mean don't negotiate with the new Pac-12. But the Big 12, is it possible? Yes. Is it something that you should risk? No, absolutely not. It's an insane thing to believe that UNLV is going to go to the Big 12. And there are people in the athletic department, trust me, that think that it's likely. And I'm sorry, it's not likely, regardless of what Brett Yormark, who is the Big 12 commissioner, told Eric Harper when they talked privately a couple years ago. It's not likely. The Big 12 is not going to add UNLV before it adds Boise State. I'm sorry, I don't think it's going to. It's not going to add UNLV before it adds Oregon State. Unless UNLV starts going to the college football playoff and winning games in the college football playoff 3 or 4 years in a row, which is not going to happen. Those PAC penalties are nasty, absolutely. But UNLV is in a position of leverage right now. Negotiate them down. Negotiate the PAC penalties for leaving the Pac-12 to the Big 12 conference or a Power 4 conference. Negotiate them down. So off topic, but if the Pac-12 makes a super conference, the rumors the ACC and the Big 12 may merge into their own conference and then add us in the early 2030s. The thing is, nobody knows if that's going to happen. If you think that an institution, the NCAA, and the way that college football is going to be set up, that there's going to be a nuclear bomb dropped on it and that everything's going to change in the next 5 years, I just don't believe that people move that quickly. Could that happen in 20 years? Yes. But the SEC and the Big Ten are not going to want to take all of the teams from their conferences into whatever mega conference they could create. There are too many variables. We do not know what's going to happen. It is not smart to put your school in such a dangerous position as staying in a crappy conference. Could the Big Ten and the SEC merge and take some schools from the Big 12 and the ACC? And could this happen? Could that happen? Could UNLV end up in a second tier of 40 teams competing for a second level national championship behind, in a second tier league behind the SEC and the Big Ten? Yes, it could happen, but we don't know that that's going to happen. Nobody does. And anybody telling you that they do is absolutely full of it. What we do know is that UNLV is currently signed up to be in the worst or the second worst college football conference, and that's insane. And we know that UNLV has the ability and the leverage to put themselves in a good position in the new Pac-12 if they negotiate well. So there's just no reason to put yourself in that vulnerable of a position if you're UNLV. Having Dan Mullen in the new Mountain West is like having a Ferrari in a trailer park. You don't do it. You don't do it. There's just a principle. UNLV 30 years ago or 25 years ago was in the Big West. I'm not sure if they were in the Big West or the WAC. I think they were in the Big West at the time. And UNLV was a part of creating the best group of 5 conference when they created the Mountain West. They did this before. They knew you can't stay in the Big West anymore. And moving to the Mountain West has been an incredible benefit to UNLV over the last 25 years. They're in the WAC. Thank you, Bert. I always get confused whether they're in the WAC or the Big West or whatever. UNLV's done this before. Keep it simple, stupid. Better conference equals better. If, say we have 3 good years with Dan Mullen and we stay in the Mountain West, do you think Dan Mullen, say we have 3 good years, maybe we even make a college football playoff with Dan Mullen, which isn't likely, by the way. It could happen. Don't get me wrong. It could. But say we even have a dream season with Dan Mullen and make the college football playoff, then he's gone. Sergeant Moore, who says, my dream of a Mountain Pac merge. Yeah, I mean, that would have been the sensible thing, but the Pac-12 had certain assets that they would have lost if they would have merged with the Mountain West because of naming rights. And the Pac-12, Oregon State and Washington State still own the IP of the old Pac-12. So that was just never going to happen, sadly, even though that would have been the smart thing to do. And both conferences are being hurt by not merging because, frankly, I don't think that there's enough of a media market for 2 G5 conferences competing like the new Mountain West and the new Pac-12 will compete. It's ridiculous. This shouldn't happen. This shouldn't exist. And both conferences are going to be hurt because of it. But UNLV has some leverage right now. Do not stay in a crappy conference. Canzano and people keep reporting that UNLV, that there's smoke for UNLV to join the new Pac-12. Yeah, the PAC. Well, actually, I think the PAC would be okay with Air Force because of their service academy, and just by nature of that, there's a little bit of prestige there. The PAC does not want New Mexico. The PAC does not want Wyoming. The PAC does not want San Jose State. Those schools just don't invest enough into their football, and therefore they don't want them. So, it's trying times. I think UNLV has a chance here, but there's a lot of headstrong people that think that UNLV is outsmarting people by saying, oh, we're going to be so much smarter than the new PAC schools. Look at those idiots. When in reality, it's kind of like picture an NBA. The analogy that keeps coming to my mind is picture an NBA team that is mediocre. That's always the 9 or the 10 seed, a play-in team. They never actually make it to the playoffs, but they've got a good player. They're always the 9 or the 10 seed, though. They're always just good enough. And people are consistently trying to trade for their best player. And that team keeps saying, no, we're going to wait for a better deal. No, we're going to wait for a better deal. I'm the Atlanta Hawks. I have Trae Young. All these people are trying to offer me first-round picks and future assets for Trae Young, but we're smarter than they are. We know better than they are. We're going to continue down this road, even though everybody knows that this road isn't going to take them anywhere. That's kind of how I feel about UNLV. They think they're being smart here. They do. They think they've discovered a glitch in the matrix, when in reality, there are basic principles that you need to follow in college athletics. Better conference, better competition. You get a chance to do that, you do it. You don't do it stupidly. You don't just accept blind terms. Even though I wish they would have done that initially, I get it. You don't just accept crap from the Pac-12. But if you have a chance to put yourself in a better position to succeed in a better conference with a better media deal, with better investment from the other schools in the conference, you have to do that. You have to. So that's my 2 cents about it. Is UNLV going to join the Pac-12? Let me give you a percentage. I think that there is a 40% chance that UNLV joins the Pac-12. 40%. I think that there's a lot of headstrong people in the athletic department and around the programs that think that they're being smart by staying in the Mountain West, and it's going to take a heck of a lot to change their mind. It's going to take a crazy court decision. It's going to take a crazy media deal that the Pac-12 could get. It's going to take UNLV, the new Mountain West, getting a terrible media deal. I think, when we first signed the deal to stay in the Mountain West, we didn't know who the Mountain West was going to add. Looking at who the Mountain West has added, UTEP, it's fine. UC Davis, puke. Grand Canyon, pretty good addition for basketball, but it doesn't move the needle because they don't have football. Hawaii, whatever. Northern Illinois, fine. Not terrible. But, matchup, if you want to compare the two conferences, if you think that it's a lateral move, what I want you to do is look at how much each school in each conference invests in football annually. You can look up their football and overall athletic budgets. Look at what their athletic budgets are. Look at how badly these Mountain West schools, look how little they invest into sports, and look at the Pac-12 schools who invest a lot more into sports. Look at the winning percentages, the history. 13 of the last 14 Mountain West champions are going to the new Pac-12. UNLV has never won a Mountain West championship. Utah State, San Diego State, Boise State, they have all the Mountain West championships. San Jose State's the only one, and they won it in the COVID year. Look at basketball. Look at the success that these new PAC schools have had in making the NCAA tournament and getting revenue from making the NCAA tournament, and compare that to the new Mountain West, where there's not a lot. It's just a no-brainer. You do not stay in crappy conferences if you can help it. So I've said all I want to say about it. There have been, think they're waiting out the lawsuit settlement. I think that March is early March. We're in about a month. We'll probably know how this is all going to settle out. Rumor is the PAC, Texas State to the PAC is imminent. Yes, the Texas State is probably going to go to the Pac-12. That's what people have said. There's been a little bit of contrary reporting on that. Obviously, I wouldn't know anything about that, but I would guess that because Texas State saw the Mountain West and saw the Pac-12 and said, we don't like the Mountain West. We're going to go to the Pac-12. So why do you think Texas State did that? If you're a big fan, a big proponent of staying in the Mountain West, why do you think a school like Texas State looked at the two conferences and said, Mountain West sucks, I'm going to go to the Pac-12? Look at that. And think about the leverage that UNLV has. Who else is the Pac-12 going to add? They want to get to 9 members. Pac-12 wants to get to 9 members so that they can more easily schedule their football seasons. It makes scheduling for the conference a lot easier, having enough members for each member to play 8 games. And so UNLV's got some leverage here. They're not going to add Memphis, I don't think. They're not going to add Tulane. I guess they could go after a school like North Texas, but UNLV is the best option. Use that leverage. And don't use it to try and get some special treatment from the Pac-12. Use it for all the benefit of all of the schools in the Pac-12. It should be an exit fee to go to a Power 4 conference from the new Pac-12 should be the media amount, yearly amount, so say it's $10 million per year per school, times the number of years left you have on the deal. Right now, it's 3 times the number of years you have left on the deal. I get that you have to compensate the conference if you leave, but it should be a reasonable compensation. And bring back HeyRep, because HeyRep legitimately still has brand value. You still see recruits posting HeyRep. There's no reason There's no reason not to have a mascot. Rework him a little bit, but bring him back. So, guys, I got to run. I have not been home yet today, but I want to thank you all for checking out the show. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a wonderful night. Hopefully, the Rebels can pull out a crazy game at the Spectrum against the Utah State Aggies. That's what I'm pulling for. I will be live immediately after that game ends. Let's run.